This got lost in all of the hype around the high-end Galaxy Tab S11 release last week, but this is the little tablet that could, the Galaxy Tab S10 Lite. It's not the most impressive tablet out there, but it's powerful enough to run any drawing app well, and that makes this, or will make this, one of the best values in drawing tech around. Let me explain, after a word from our sponsor, cows. They're pretty great, I guess. Is there a link or anything for them to click on?
No.
Okay, on to the review then. Samsung has a lot of tablets. It can get confusing. There's the A series. Those are the budget tablets. They don't come with S Pen, so I don't review those here on my Fancy Pants wannabe art channel. Then there's the S series. They are those high-end tablets, like their Pro line. But within the S series, they have their FE line, which stands for Fan Edition. That's like their middle tier tablets, kind of like their iPad Air. And then there's their Lite tablets. This is their low-end tablets, but they still come with S Pens. That is what this tablet is. And this tablet is replacing the now super old Galaxy Tab S6 Lite. It originally came out in 2020, but they have updated the processor. They did it in 2022, and then they updated the processor just last year in 2024. And over the last 5 years, I have recommended the heck out of that thing. Why? Because it would often go on sale for like $250. Occasionally it would drop down below like $200. And if you're just getting into digital art, $250 for a tablet with a screen that you can draw on, that can do all of these other things, is an amazing deal. The S6 Lite has been the ultimate beginner's tablet for years. But Brad, this one is $350. Is that really a great deal? Right now, no. Not really. But Samsung always lowers their prices a few months out from launch, so assuming they don't have to adjust them because of tariffs or unseen cost down the road, this will be the best budget Android tablet going forward for most people. At $350, you're probably better off going with like a S10 FE, Samsung's mid-tier tablet, which technically costs more, but heck, right now you could find that on sale for $350. I know if you're brand new to this, all these numbers and letters, it's confusing. I'm so sorry. I rank all of these over on my website, breadsartschool.com, so if you want to go there to do your research, have at it. So what comes in this fancy box that I'm hoping doesn't fall over? It's pretty minimal. You get the tablet, the S Pen, and a charging cable. That's it. You're gonna have to bring your own power brick to charge this tablet. Now the tablet has a 10.9-inch LCD display with a 90 Hz refresh rate and a resolution of 1320 by 2112. That's a 16 by 10 aspect ratio. It looks very good. For an LCD display, this is really nice. You would never know that this is their budget low-end tablet by the display. Looking at it next to the old S6, this is a nice upgrade. Looking at it next to the slightly better S10 FE, I can tell the difference. It is a very, very similar screen. The FE goes a little bit brighter, but man, they are close. And that's a good thing. This also carries over the latest squared edge design that Samsung has been putting on all their tablets the last few years. It has a nice metal body, really great build quality here. I picked up the dark gray color. I was tempted by the hot pink they offered just because I thought it would film well, but at the end of the day, I just like the gray better. I also like the silver finish, but my FE has silver and I want to be able to tell them apart. There's a single camera along the back. It's nothing special, but it's good for scanning sketches or grabbing a quick reference photo. Same thing with the front-facing camera. Nothing special, but it works for video calls. 5 megapixels, 1080p, 30 frames a second. It's okay. This comes with 128 gigabytes of storage and 6 gigabytes of RAM. You could pay a little bit more and get 256 gigabytes of storage with 8 gigabytes of RAM. And there's an SD card slot, so you can expand your storage all the way up to 2 terabytes if you want to in the future. Also, why are the cows still here?
The Cow Association of America has sponsored the entire video.
Okay.
This one's name is Exynos.
Nice to meet you. Under the hood, there is an Exynos 1380 processor. Oh, okay, I get it now. This is a small step up from the 1280 processor that was in last year's S6 Lite. But this is still very much a budget processor. I found that the drawing apps I was using, they're great, they run fine. Even some of the games that I put on this thing, it runs okay on this tablet. They're fine. Don't expect this tablet to be a powerhouse. The biggest downside here when you go with a lower end processor like this is that you're saving money now, but how long is this processor going to feel good? How long is it going to feel as snappy as it does today? It's entirely possible, that in the future, it's going to start to feel sluggish, especially after a few years of software updates. Although, one nice thing about Samsung's products is they've been expanding their support for their tablets. This one will now be supported with Android and security updates into the year 2032. This baby cow will be 7 years old when you run out of support for this tablet. How much are the cow people paying for this promotion?
Nothing. You're doing it for exposure.
Exposure to what? Foot and mouth disease? This also comes with an S Pen right here in the box. When we talk about value, this is where Samsung has a lot of other tablet makers beat. They charge $50, $60, $70 extra for their pens. And most other Android pens aren't even this good. Heck, even the Apple Pencil is $100 extra. I think the entry-level iPad also a very good place to start if you're just starting out, but once you add in the Apple Pencil, that costs way over $400. So this S Pen is pressure sensitive, does that pretty well. It's accurate, does that pretty well. It gives you your straight angled lines with no wobble. I love that. That is something other Android styluses really do struggle with. It's kind of light. That is a problem with many of the S Pens nowadays. Samsung is probably thinking about portability here above all else, but having something with just a little bit more weight in your hand does feel better, at least to me. Another plus is that the pen is battery free, so there's no need to charge this thing ever. It just works all the time. The pen does connect to the side of the device when you're not using it, but that's just for storage. This pen also has a soft rubbery tip. Because this is a smooth glass screen, using a plastic tip stylus would feel kind of slippery on the screen. There would be no grip. Samsung has the soft tip on here to give you like more control. Gives you a little bit of drag to the pen when you're drawing and slows it down just enough to make it feel better. But it doesn't feel natural. It doesn't feel like paper. It does take some getting used to. Kind of like drawing itself. You just kind of have to do it to get better at it. That's where my Learn to Draw in 60 Days course comes in. It's for beginners who are just learning the fundamentals of art. If you've tried other tutorials and thought, man, this is hard, what am I missing? This is designed for what?
You already have a sponsor for this video.
Right.
BradsArtSchool.com to learn more. Don't tell the cow people.
Folks have been asking me to do latency tests again. I'm down. Let's go. It really depends on the app. The Samsung Notes app is really well optimized. It is fantastic. There is almost no pen lag on this. Other apps like Clip Studio Paint, which is what I'm using for most of this video for drawing, there is some lag. I love it, but the lines can look pretty lag. Part of this is due to smoothing. Clip Studio Paint automatically puts on many of its brushes, so I do toggle it off for these tests. So here's the Notes app. I'm using the Galaxy Tab S11 Ultra, and I am comparing it here to the S10 Lite. You can definitely see a difference when I slow it down, but overall it holds up well. Here's another example. This time I am using Clip Studio Paint. I have the Galaxy Tab S11 Ultra and against the S10 Lite. I also made sure I went into the brushes and I'm turning off stabilization for this demo. Obviously the lag here, much more pronounced, and that's what you're gonna see in most drawing apps. I was kind of curious if I would see as much of a difference if I was just looking at the S10 Lite and the S10 FE, because those processors are closer together than the FE's processor is to the Ultra. So this is Clip Studio Paint again with smoothing off. So just for fun, let's do a different app. This is iBez Paint X with the stabilizer off. This time the Tab S10 Lite versus the S11 Ultra. And again, for funsies, let's look at the S10 Lite versus the S10 FE in iBez Paint X. Now, it was just last week that I reviewed the Galaxy S11 Ultra that I was showing in those lag tests. It is the big expensive brother to this tablet. It has all the bells and whistles and comes with the new redesigned S Pen. And so you might be wondering, what exactly am I giving up if I go with a cheaper tablet? For me, the big thing is the processor and how long this tablet will last you in terms of years of use. Even though you get 7 cow years of updates, my hunch is that this is going to slow down way before you get there. You also give up things like the fingerprint reader to log into the tablet. There's no video out with the USB Type-C port, so you can't plug this into an external monitor. The screen quality, well, still very good. I don't want to undersell that. Doesn't really hold up in terms of brightness against that AMOLED display. The colors aren't quite as punchy, especially the blacks and the whites on the S10 Ultra. And the pen on the S11 Ultra has been redesigned. For the most part, it feels pretty much like the same pen here. In fact, that fancy pants new pen works just fine on this tablet. I think the main difference with the new pen here is that it has a more tapered pencil-like tip, and that makes it easier to shade with if you're using a pencil brush or something like that. The S Pen that this comes with has a more rounded top, and so as you start to tilt it, it's harder to do that whole shading thing. With the more tapered tip, it just tapers easier. There is an S Pen Pro pen, and it also has a taper tip, and it shades easier than this pen as well. As a replacement to the old S6 Lite, I think this tablet is fantastic. It's a better screen, it's a nice little processor bump, the base storage goes from 64 gigabytes of storage to 128. If you want a cheap way to get into digital art, I love this product. Maybe wait for the inevitable sale for this one though. At $350, I think it's slightly overpriced, but when it does go down in price, you're getting a tremendous value for the money that you're spending. Just understand that you are compromising on the longevity of the product by going with something so cheap. I've got some questions from you guys. Let's head over to the Q&A desk and talk it out there. All right, on to question number 1, which is please also try Super Display app on this tablet. Wired. All right, so what is Super Display? It's an app on the Android store that basically turns your Android tablet into like a Wacom tablet. So you can connect it to a PC and then use the tablet as a drawing tablet. It's a really, really super cool idea, and it kind of sort of works. It's not absolutely perfect, but it can work surprisingly well. So I did test it on this tablet, and when I was testing it, it worked pretty darn well. So here's my thing with Super Display. I did a full review of this app several years ago, and overall I like it. But it's not, I personally don't think it's a replacement for a traditional drawing tablet. Now, if you want to jump into Photoshop or Clip Studio and do some touch-ups or spend 10 or 15 minutes like fiddling around and like adding something to an illustration that you already have, it's actually super really good at that. If you want to use this for hours at a time to do your illustration and rely on it as a primary drawing tablet, I don't recommend it. And I came across a similar experience here. When I plugged it in and I set it up and I started drawing, I was like, hey, this works really well. But then what you start to notice is there are moments, even when it's wired, where you will see some of that lag or the pen won't catch up or those little things. It doesn't feel nearly as good as native drawing, like drawing in Clip Studio on the actual device itself or drawing in one of those other apps. It's just not quite as responsive. It's just a touch too laggy. Sometimes you don't really notice that lag, but the more you have it plugged in and the longer you use it, the more likely you are to see that lag. It's a fairly inexpensive app. I think there might be a subscription to it now. There's a 3-day free trial, so if it's something you want to try on Android, absolutely you should try it and see if it works for you. But I hesitate a little bit to say go out and buy this tablet or any Android tablet to use it this way full-time as your primary drawing device, because it's just not quite a good enough drawing experience. And I think you're really going to notice that when you jump from a native app and using that for an hour and then jumping to this and using that for an hour, you're going to be like, oh, I see it now. I see why it's just a little bit off. How much better is this than the S6 Lite? That's a great question. I think it's a really big step up, mainly because I think the build quality is a lot better. I think the screen looks better. The processor's only a little bit of a jump up, but generally I think it is a really good upgrade, and it just looks more modern. It feels better in the hands. I know that's not the main reason to buy a tablet, but generally I think it is a really good upgrade. How does this compare to the Tab S10 FE in terms of performance? In terms of performance, it's a little bit of a jump up to the FE. The space between the Lite and the FE is smaller than the space of the processing power of the FE and the Ultra or the S11. So I hope with the FE version of this tablet, they can kind of get it more centered, a little more positioned, get that processor a little bit higher in the FE. I don't know if they will, but I'd like to see that. The biggest difference I see in these two, and the way I can actually tell them apart from the color of them, is the screen. The screen gets brighter on the FE. The viewing angles are just a little bit better on the FE. The FE, you can tell, is just a little bit better in every way, but man, are they close. Funny how the Lite is the same price as the 10 FE, at least on release here. You can find the 128 gigabyte variant for $345 on both. Yeah, I actually mentioned that at the beginning of the video. That's why I said that this will be a really good value in the future, because right now, since the FE is 6 months old, I don't think it's quite 6 months old, but it's old enough where you can find it on sale for the price of this thing. And so if you're looking at those two things together, get the FE, get the better screen, get the processor bump. A Lite and an FE in the same line. Oh my God, what do I feel like this is going to be really confusing? I know this isn't a question, but thank you. I completely agree. Doing this video, one of the hardest things in the world was not to just throw out a bunch of letters and numbers to people who are watching. Now, if you're watching this video probably in the first week that it's up, you're probably someone who follows this stuff and are maybe a little bit familiar with these Android tablets. But when I make a video review, I'm trying to think ahead, especially for these entry-level products, to the person who's going to be watching this video 8 months from now. That poor person is probably not that familiar with Samsung's lineup and is probably looking at all these tablets and all these letters and all these numbers and is getting really confused. And so that's why I started the video the way I did, by saying, look, Samsung's got all these tablets. You got the A series, you got the S series, you got the Lite and the FE. This is how it lays out. This is where this one sits. Because if you want to get really technical, this processor and this product is the same processor that was in the S10 FE. So this is almost an identical product to the last FE edition. And I was going to put that in the video. I was like, this is too many letters, too many numbers. It's going to confuse people when they watch it, especially when we start talking about older tablets. Can you use the Tab S11 S Pen on this tablet? Yes, you can. And if you're looking for tilt, it works a lot better. Other than that, it works pretty much the same, like just drawing and that sort of thing. Feels identical. Does the low RAM make it run slow? It can. I didn't really notice it too much in what I was doing, but where you're going to start to notice is if you're dealing with like really big files with really a lot of layers and that sort of thing. What often happens with Android apps is if you have a huge canvas and you have a ton of layers, many of them can't manage that when they run out of RAM, and that's when you start to see your apps crashing. That is definitely one of the performance things that's going to happen on a lower end tablet like this. I'd like to know if it supports display out this time. I don't know if I mentioned this in the full review or not, but it does not. No, and I don't believe the FE does as well. The previous Lights and FEs didn't. That is correct. Yeah, nope, unfortunately it's not supported here. Please use it under daylight. I didn't do that for the review, but I did take it outside when I was thinking about this question because I was kind of curious. It doesn't get as bright as the FE. It doesn't get nearly as bright as the Ultra. I mean, I could see it when I was outside. I wouldn't recommend it for outside use, to be honest with you, especially if you're coloring and drawing and that sort of thing. Like, it works, right? You can kind of read on it. If you're in the shade and direct sunlight, forget about it. But where I'd run into trouble is if I'm trying to pick out colors, because if you're like trying to color match and do contrast and that sort of thing, it's going to look so different once you bring it inside and actually see it properly. Well, how budget is it? And I think it fits the bill pretty well, right? Like, it is budget. You are making those compromises I talked about in the review. But I think if you compare it to what budget tablets were when the S6 originally came out, I like the screen so much better. Like, when you first open it up and turn it on, looking at this screen, you would never guess that this is Samsung's lowest end S tier tablet. It just doesn't look that bad. And maybe that's just where the Android ecosystem is the products and the materials that are now being used to make these even low-end tablets are just good enough. A few years ago, a $200 tablet, heck, even the Huion tablet I reviewed, what was it, a year and a half ago? That was a super cheap tablet, and it was crap. The screen was awful. The pen was awful. Everything about it was awful. Here, you're paying kind of the same price, and you're getting a really, really, really good screen. I keep saying really, really, really good. I should place this in context. For the price, I was really impressed with the screen. Display performance pen in comparison with the FE, is it good enough for most people, or is it worth the jump to the FE? Is that worth it? I think the jump, for if you're going to be drawing on it a lot and you want this to last many years, I think the jump to the FE is probably a good idea. However, right now, since the S11 just came out, I think the FE, even though it's not that old, is less of a bargain than it used to be. I think if we wait a few months, probably in the spring, we're probably going to see the S11 FE, and that's probably a better upgrade. And again, I kind of said it early in the Q&A. I hope that the processor in that is just a touch better than it's been. It probably won't be. But yeah, I think if you could spring for it, go with the FE, especially right now. If you're looking at two products that are $350, definitely get the FE. So that is the video. Those are the questions. Thank you all for participating in this. If you have any questions, hit me up in the comments. Thank you all for watching, and I'll talk to you in a couple of days.